Okay, guys, so today we're going to look at how to solve linear equations with one variable. What that means is we're looking at solving a problem that has a letter in it that represents a number. We all know a variable just means it's a letter that represents a number. And we're going to figure out what number that letter represents. So, we talked about this yesterday, and for some reason, we just didn't quite get it. So we're going to go through it today. I'm gonna do the I do portion, and we know that means that's when I talk and teach and you listen. And today what I want you to do is I want you to write down every step. So if I say the first thing I'm gonna do is draw a smile face, I want you to write number 1, draw a smile face. So in other words, I want you to write all the steps I do, and we're gonna see who gets them all the best, okay? So the first thing I'm going to do when I look at my equation is I'm going to simplify each side as much as I can. So on the first side, I see 6 plus 8x. I know my first thought is I want to combine those, but I can't because they're not like terms. The only way I could combine those if they both had the same variable to the same power, and they don't. So let's look at the other side. The other side, well, I don't have any like terms, but I do have parentheses. So I can simplify that by distributing. So that means I am going to bring down my left side, so 6 plus 8x equals 4 times 4x is 16x. And 4 times negative 7, because we remember we keep that sign, the sign with the number. So 4 times negative 7 is negative 28. Okay. My next step number 2, is going to be eliminate the variable from one side. So I want to get all the x's on one side of the problem. So I can move either one. It doesn't matter, I'll get the same answer. So I am going to say, I think I just want to move the 16x to the left side. So I'm going to say minus 16x. And the reason I'm using minus is because we move things to the other side of the equal sign by using the opposite operation. And the opposite of a positive 16x is a minus or negative 16x. So I'm going to go ahead. Now what I do to one side of the equation, I've got to do to the other side. So we're going to go ahead and put minus 16x over on this side of the equal sign. Now I'm going to simplify, bring down my 6. Then I have 8x minus 16x, which leaves me a negative 8x, equals 16x minus 16x. That's 0, so I don't have to write anything down there. And then I'm going to bring down the minus 28 or negative 28. Okay. Now my next step is to eliminate the constant term from the side with the variables. So the constant, if you remember, is the number that doesn't have a variable. So my constants in this one are my 6 and my negative 28. But I want to eliminate my constant from the other side of the equation. So I want to get the x by itself. So I'm going to choose to move the 6 over with the negative 28 so that I can get the x closer to being alone. Now, the opposite of positive 6 is negative 6 or minus 6. And what I do to one side, I've got to do to the other. So 6 minus 6 is 0, so I don't have to write the 0 down, but I am going to bring down my negative 8x equals, and what is negative 28 minus 6? Well, that's negative 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34. Don't be afraid to count it out. All right, now I have all the x's on one side and all the constants on the other. I'm getting really close to solving this. I have to figure out what that x is. So my last step would be to divide each side by the coefficient of the variable. And we know the coefficient means it is the number that is with the letter. If they're squished together, it means multiply. So that means negative 8 times x And my opposite operation of times is divide or division. So in order to get rid of that, I'm going to divide by negative 8. And what I do to one side, gotta do to the other. So, negative 8 divided by negative 8 actually equals 1. So that means I can bring down 1x, but when I have a 1x, I really don't have to write a 1 in front of it because it's implied. So I know that I can just put x equals, and then I'm going to say negative 34 divided by negative 8. Well, I know a negative divided by a negative is a positive, so I know right away my number is going to be positive. And this is where you might want to use your calculator because this isn't a nice even number. But if you use your calculator, you're going to get 4.25 as an answer. So we know that x equals 4.25. Does anyone have any questions about how I got 4.25? Okay, now let's look at our steps, and I'm going to go through my steps again just to see if you got what I got. So the first thing I did was to simplify each side of the equation. The second thing I did was to eliminate the variable from one side. So I got all the variables on one side. Then the third step was to eliminate the constant terms, which are the numbers without the variable, from the other side. So I want all the x's on one side, all the not x's on the other side. The fourth step was to divide each side by the coefficient of the variable, and that should give me my answer. Okay, let's try one more that has a negative number in the front, and it's something that I saw a lot of you got a little worried with yesterday. Just remember, negative numbers and bigger numbers are still just numbers. We can still do this. All right, so we're going to use the same steps we just did. I'm going to go through one more, and then we'll do some together, okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is simplify each side of the equation as much as I can. So I'm going to look at this side. I have negative 8x minus 2. Oops, got the wrong thing there. So I have negative 8x minus 2. I can't simplify that any because there's no like terms and there's nothing to distribute. So we're going to look at the right side of the equation. And I have something I can distribute over there. So I'm going to say 3 times 8 and then 3 times negative 7x. So we're going to bring down the negative 8x minus 2 on the left side of the equation. And when I bring this down, I'm going to say 3 times 8 is 24. And then 3 times negative 7x is negative 21x, because a positive times a negative is a negative. All right. The next step we had written down, step number 2, is to eliminate the variable from one side of the equation. So we want to put all of the x's on one side of the equation. I like to put my x's on the left. So I'm going to start on the right. I have a negative 21x. I'm going to use the opposite operation. So opposite of minus 21 is plus 21x. And what I do to one side, I gotta do to the other side. So plus 21x, and that equals, we have negative 8 plus 21. Don't let that negative fool you. So that's really like 21 minus 8. So negative 8 plus 21 is going to leave us 13. So 13x minus 2, because we got to bring that down. We don't just, numbers don't just go away, equals 24. And then negative 21 plus 21x is 0, because negative 21x plus 21x equals 0, so we don't have to write the 0 down. It didn't just disappear. It equals 0. Now the next step is eliminate the constant. So we want to take the number that has no variable and move it to the other side. On the left side, we have a minus 2 or negative 2. The opposite of negative 2 is positive 2 plus 2. So I'm going to add 2 to get rid of it to make it equal 0. Now when I do that, whatever I do to one side, I've got to do to the other side. So I'm going to bring down my 13x. Negative 2 plus 2 is 0. Equals 24 plus 2 is 26. And step number 4 said to divide by the coefficient. And the coefficient is the number that's with the letter. So we want to divide this by 13. Now, 13 divided by 13 is going to be 1. So that leaves me 1x. And whatever I do to one side of the equation, I have to do the other. So I also have to divide this by 13. 26 divided by 13 is 2. Now remember, I can write the 1x here. That's the same thing. But we know it's implied, so we don't usually write the 1. We just know it's there. Any questions about how we got x equals 2? At this point, I will have students work with me on solving a couple more of these by saying, okay, what is the first step? What do I do now? Let's look at step number 2. And we'll use our steps as a checklist to make sure that we don't miss any of our mastery criteria. And then I will have students work either in groups set up based on ability and who got it, who was struggling, kind of mix those groups together and have them use their mastery criteria step by step while I circulate the breakout rooms to make sure that they've got what they need or that they're on track. And then I might use Delta Math or an assignment in order to assure that they mastered the information on solving linear equations with one variable.